Welcome back to Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization, where I explore the incomprehensible in our never-normal world. I'm Ira Wolfe. Quick question. When was the last time you believed a 5-year plan would survive 5 months? Today's episode is another deep dive built on my original content. I then handed it to an AI engine, and what came back was one of the sharpest conversations I've heard on why our traditional approach to planning is broken, and what it will take to thrive when certainty disappears. My voice takes a step back in these episodes. The ideas don't. It's just my research with a different narrator. Let's dive in.
Be honest. Do you remember the last time you sat down and, seriously tried to write out a 5-year plan?
Oh, wow. Yeah. That feels like a lifetime ago.
It almost feels like a joke now, doesn't it? I mean, the sheer audacity of trying to predict where your career or your industry or even just the global economy is going to be in 5 years, especially when half the time we can barely forecast what the next quarter is going to look like. Planning that far ahead just feels, I don't know, almost quaint now.
Yeah, it really is.
Like churning your own butter or navigating a road trip with a giant paper map.
It really is a relic of a bygone era, and yet for a very long time, mapping out a 5-year trajectory wasn't a joke at all. I mean, it was the absolute, unquestioned standard of professional and corporate planning.
Yep, totally.
Entire multinational corporations built their foundations on those long-term projections. It was just how things were done.
So today, our mission for this deep dive is to map out exactly why the world of work feels so chaotic right now.
Yeah.
We're going to explore why that 5-year plan totally broke down.
And maybe more importantly, how to adapt to it.
Exactly. How you can actually thrive in this new reality instead of just treading water. We're pulling from a really fascinating piece published recently on LinkedIn by Ira Wolfe. It's titled, From SPOD to VECA and Banahai to Bedlam, What Every Leader Needs to Know Now.
It's a great read.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Wolfe isn't just, throwing around corporate buzzwords to sell seminars or whatever. He is documenting a massive, fundamental, and structural shift in reality.
Yeah, and that structural shift is the crucial starting point here. Because if you are listening to this right now and you feel a constant low-level anxiety about your job security or the rapid pace of AI or just the fragility of the economy in general.
Which, let's be honest, is pretty much everyone right now.
Right. If you feel that, that anxiety is not a personal failing. It isn't just burnout, and it isn't just all in your head.
Right, it's real.
Very real. The frameworks we used to rely on to organize society and business are quite literally breaking under the strain of modern interconnectivity. We aren't just facing harder problems than previous generations. We are facing entirely new categories of problems, requiring completely different cognitive tools.
So to understand why everything feels so broken today, we have to look at the baseline, right? We have to go back to when the old tools actually worked.
Exactly.
Wolfe calls this progression the acronym ARC, and he starts it in what sociologists refer to as the SPOD era. That's SPOD, steady, predictable, ordinary, definite.
Yeah, and that acronym perfectly encapsulates the post-World War II Cold War era.
Okay.
The parameters of the global system back then were locked into a very stiff bipolar standoff. So, it was a tense time geopolitically, obviously.
Right. The Cold War wasn't exactly relaxing.
No, not at all. But economically and structurally, it was legible. The variables were contained. If you joined a major corporation at age 22, the internal mechanics of that company were stable enough that you could reasonably project your career path all the way to age 65.
Wow. Imagine that.
Right. The mechanics of a SPOD world rewarded sheer execution. The rules were known, you just had to follow them efficiently.
But the ground eventually starts moving. So we hit 1987. The Army War College is looking around. They see the Cold War order thawing. Globalization is accelerating. And they realize the old rules are just evaporating.
Completely.
So they borrow research from leadership scholars Warren Bennis and Burt Nannis, and they adopt a new acronym, VUCA. That's volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous.
And Bennis's contribution to this era is the load-bearing wall for everything we are going to discuss today. Back in the 80s, he insisted that we needed to stop conflating management with leadership.
Interesting. How so?
Well, he defined management as the discipline of doing things right. It's about optimization within a known, stable system.
Okay, so you know the rules, so you focus on maximizing efficiency,
Right.
You squeeze more margin out of the supply chain,
Right.
or you optimize the assembly line, like tweaking what's already there.
Precisely. But leadership, Bennis argued, is about doing the right things. Leadership is the discipline of making choices in conditions where nobody fully understands the system yet.
I see.
When the world shifted from SPOD to VUCA, we suddenly needed a lot less management because the stable systems to manage were disappearing, and we needed a lot more leadership to navigate the fog. VUCA acknowledged that you couldn't see far ahead, so you had to build contingencies.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here, though.
Go for it.
Wolfe points out that by 1999, he was already using VUCA to describe the perfect labor storm. Demographics shifting, skills gaps, rapid technological turnover. VUCA was the ultimate corporate framework for a solid 30 years.
It was everywhere.
Yeah, it was in every corporate strategy deck. It handled the dot-com bubble, the 2008 financial crisis, massive globalization. So if VUCA was explicitly designed to handle volatility and complexity, why did it suddenly expire on 2020? Why do we need yet another acronym? I mean, isn't BANI just an excuse for leaders who failed to properly model the risks of a global pandemic?
What's fascinating here is the distinction between a world that is hard to read and a world that is actively breaking.
Okay.
VUCA described a landscape where the fog of war was thick. You couldn't see the obstacles, but the ground underneath your feet was still solid.
So you could still stand on it.
Right. You could gather enough data, build a robust radar, and model multiple scenarios. But around 2020, driven by extreme digital hyperconnectivity and decades stripping redundancy out of global systems, a phase transition occurred.
A phase transition.
Yeah. The ground itself started to fracture. It is no longer just a data gathering problem.
And that brings us to futurist Jamais Cassio, who realized VUCA was functionally obsolete and coined BANI. BANI. Let's walk through the mechanics of what each of these letters actually means on the ground, because honestly, it defines the Tuesday morning dread we are all trying to navigate.
It really does.
So starting with the B, brittle.
Right, brittleness. And this is the direct unintended consequence of decades of SPOD and VUCA management styles that prioritized maximum efficiency over everything else.
Like what?
Think about just-in-time manufacturing. For decades, companies systematically eliminated warehouses full of backup inventory because storing inventory costs money.
Oh, right.
They designed supply chains to deliver parts exactly when they were needed on the assembly line. That is incredibly efficient, but it stripped all the shock absorbers out of the system.
So the system doesn't bend under pressure anymore, it shatters. A brittle system looks incredibly robust and profitable right up until the exact second it disintegrates. We saw this when the pandemic hit. The supply chain didn't just slow down. Whole sectors vanished overnight because there was zero slack in the system.
And that brittleness feeds directly into the A, which is anxious.
Right.
If you unconsciously recognize that the systems supporting your life, your industry, the economy, the power grid are brittle, you develop a persistent psychological tax.
It's exhausting.
It is. Even on a quiet day when nothing is currently on fire, you are waiting for the smoke. You are constantly bracing for the shoe to drop.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Then the N stands for nonlinear. To me, this is the death of traditional cause and effect.
Oh, absolutely.
In a steady or even volatile world, if you pushed a lever this hard, you got a roughly proportional result over there. But in a BANI world, the hyperconnectivity means a tiny input produces a wildly disproportionate outcome.
The butterfly effect on steroids.
Exactly. A great example of this is the Ever-Given cargo ship getting stuck in the Suez Canal back in 2021.
Yes, perfect example.
Right. A gust of wind blows a single ship sideways, and suddenly 12% of global trade just halts. It holds up almost $10 billion of goods a day, creating localized shortages of random products months later on the other side of the planet. I mean, that is nonlinear.
And that leads perfectly into the I, which is incomprehensible. It is crucial to understand that incomprehensible does not mean we lack information.
We have so much information.
We have more data than at any point in human history. The issue is that the scale of interconnectivity, combined with algorithmic trading and artificial intelligence operating at light speed, has created a global board that is simply too massive for any human brain to model.
We just can't hold it all in our heads.
We physically cannot comprehend the downstream effects of our actions anymore.
The data exists, but the capacity to synthesize it into a reliable forecast just doesn't. That is BANI. But Wolfe takes it one step further. He introduces a final stage that almost feels taboo to talk about in corporate strategy.
Bedlam. Bedlam is the stage where the compounding effects of BANI overwhelm all institutional capacity. It isn't just a chaotic event that you can eventually isolate and work around. It is chaos compounding on chaos.
Like a domino effect, but the dominoes are on fire.
Pretty much. Think about a pandemic causing a supply shock, which triggers severe inflation, which exacerbates political polarization, which leads to geopolitical conflict, which creates a global energy crisis.
It's all tangled together.
Right. You can't separate the variables to treat them individually. In Bedlam, the very concept of a plan ceases to be a functional unit of measurement.
That raises a huge question, though. If our environment has fundamentally shifted from complicated to complex and now to full-blown bedlam, what is the mechanical engine underneath this? Why are our old problem-solving methods failing so spectacularly?
To understand the failure of our methods, we have to look at this 2007 Harvard Business Review piece by David Snowden and Mary Boone. They introduced the Sinefin model.
The Sinefin model.
Okay. Yeah, it's a decision-making framework that categorizes the environments leaders face into different domains. So you have simple, complicated, complex, and chaotic.
Okay, 4 domains.
The structural takeaway here is that problem types are not a matter of degree, they are a matter of kind.
You cannot solve a complex problem with a complicated problem toolkit. It just won't work. I was trying to visualize this, and here is an analogy based strictly on how Snowden defines these domains.
Let's hear it.
Think about a complicated problem like repairing a high-end, intricate luxury watch.
Okay.
There are hundreds of microscopic gears in there. I mean, I personally couldn't do it. But the watch has a blueprint. There's a definitive, stable right answer. You just have to hire an expert watchmaker who can use the sense, analyze, respond method.
Yeah.
They look at it, they analyze the broken gear, and they fix it.
That is the perfect representation of a VUCA environment. You just need more analysis and a better expert to find the solution.
Right. But a complex problem is like trying to fix that same luxury watch, except the gears are spontaneously changing size, the materials are melting into liquid, and the underlying laws of physics in the room are fluctuating while you study it.
That sounds terrifying.
It is. There is no stable right answer. By the time the expert finishes analyzing the system has altered its own structure.
Which means the old sense, analyze, respond toolkit is actively detrimental.
You're just wasting time.
Exactly. In a complex environment like the BNI world we live in now, Snowden argues you have to use a probe, sense, respond method.
Probe, sense, respond.
You cannot study the watch to find the answer. You have to poke it. You run a small, safe-to-fail experiment.
Okay.
Then you sense how the system reacts to the poke, and then respond to that new information.
That makes so much sense. If we map Wolfe's eras onto the Sinefin model, the history of modern work just snaps right into focus.
It really does.
In the SPOD era, we had simple problems with predictable outcomes. You just execute the 5-year plan. In the VUCA era, we had complicated problems with uncertain outcomes. So you hire analysts, gather data, and build contingencies, plan A and plan B.
But in the Bayana era, we have complex problems with chaotic outcomes. You aren't building contingencies because you cannot predict the variables. You are constantly probing the environment and rewriting the core strategy in real time.
That sounds exhausting.
It is, and the profound disconnect in the modern workplace is that leaders are still demanding VUCA-style analysis and certainty for BANA-style complexities.
They want the guarantee.
Right. They want a comprehensive report before they act, but by the time the report is printed, the world has moved on.
So if the world is brittle, anxious, nonlinear, and incomprehensible, and we are constantly trying to probe a shifting system, what is the antidote? Because just diagnosing this is incredibly heavy.
It can feel bleak, for sure.
Right. Some management authors, like Bob Johansen and Angela Williams, suggest the answer to brittleness is bendable resilience. If the system is rigid and brittle, we need to learn to bend so we don't break. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Wolfe argues that merely aiming to be bendable is a massive underreaction to bedlam.
Resilience is certainly better than brittleness, but it is a survival mechanism, not a growth strategy. To find the real antidote, we have to turn to the statistician and author Nassim Nicholas Taleb.
Okay.
He coined the concept of anti-fragility. It is vital to understand the mechanical difference between resilience and anti-fragility.
Break that down for us.
A resilient system takes a hit, absorbs the shock, bends, and eventually returns to its original baseline. It withstands the storm.
And bounces back.
Right. But an anti-fragile system requires the storm. It takes a hit, absorbs the shock, and systematically restructures itself to come back stronger and better calibrated than it was before the stress event.
I love that.
The human muscular system is the classic example here. If you drop a plastic cup, it might bounce and remain unbroken. That is resilience.
Right.
But when you lift heavy weights, you are actively introducing physical stress and micro tears into your muscle fibers. You are injecting disorder into a biological system.
You're breaking it down on purpose.
Exactly. And the body responds to that specific disorder by overcompensating, growing the muscle back denser and stronger. It doesn't just survive the weight, it improves because of the weight.
Man, if we connect this to the bigger picture, that is the ultimate secret to navigating a Banai world. The objective isn't to just white-knuckle your way through the anxiety and hope you survive the nonlinearity.
No, not at all.
The objective is to design your career, your team, and your organization's structures so that they extract value from the chaos.
Yes.
You distribute decision-making, you run constant small experiments, and you allow small failures to happen so the overall system learns and adapts rapidly. So what does this all mean in practice? How do we take this high-level theory about paradigms, Sinefin models, and anti-fragility and translate it to the listener's day-to-day reality?
Because it does force different adaptations depending on your role.
Right. Let's start with management. If someone listening is leading a team right now, how do they need to alter their behavior?
Wolfe makes it very clear managers have to stop shielding their teams from uncertainty.
Oh, that's counterintuitive.
It is. The old SBOD and VUCA instinct was that a good leader acts as an umbrella. You take all the terrifying ambiguity raining down from the executive board, you synthesize it, and you hand your team a clean, definitive list of tasks.
You protect them.
Right. But that umbrella instinct is actively dangerous today. If a team is constantly protected from ambiguity, they never build the anti-fragile muscle required to handle it. When the inevitable nonlinear crisis crashes through the manager's defenses, the team shatters because they have zero capacity for independent adaptation.
They've never lifted the weights.
Exactly. The most effective leaders right now are the ones who transparently normalize the fog. They stand in front of their team and say, "We are acting on incomplete information. We are running a probe. We fully expect to adjust this strategy next week based on what we learn."
They stop pretending that perfect clarity is just one more spreadsheet away.
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense. But what about the employers and the human resources departments actually building these teams?
The hiring process requires a total overhaul. Screening candidates based on a static checklist of past software proficiencies or specific industry experience is a SPOD-era habit.
It's outdated.
Completely. In a brittle labor market, the highly specific technical skills you demand in a job posting might be automated by AI or rendered obsolete by shifting software architectures within a year of the candidate taking the role.
You cannot hire for what someone already knows if the value of that knowledge is constantly depreciating. So what is the metric? What do you actually screen for?
You have to screen for the capacity to rapidly learn, unlearn, and recalibrate under pressure.
Unlearn, that's key.
You test for adaptability and cognitive flexibility, which means asking candidates to solve novel problems during the interview process rather than just recounting their past successes.
And this transitions perfectly into the academic world, too. If employers can no longer afford to hire for static skills, universities are doing their students a massive disservice by teaching them.
Oh, absolutely.
The old societal contract was entirely linear. Pick a major, acquire the specialized credential, collect the stable job. That contract is broken. And Wolfe shares a fascinating piece of research to back this up.
The student study?
Yeah. He conducted a study tracking 142 students to see what actually predicted their ability to thrive after entering the modern workforce.
And the defining metric wasn't their GPA or the prestige of their university or their raw IQ score.
It was their ability to unlearn.
Which is huge.
The faculty members who are actually preparing their students for a Banai reality aren't acting as transmitters of fixed facts. They are teaching students how to operate without a stable syllabus. They are teaching the mechanics of tossing out an outdated mental model without experiencing an existential crisis.
Yes.
Wolfe refers to this as crossing the light switch threshold. It is the crucial developmental moment where a student stops waiting for the teacher to provide total certainty and a grading rubric, and instead becomes willing to take action and iterate based on feedback.
And that profound concept of unlearning brings us directly to you, the individual employee listening to this right now.
Right, the listener.
For 50 years, the most reliable career advice was to find a specialized niche, build an incredibly deep moat of expertise in that one specific lane, and let your accumulated seniority carry you upward.
But in a world categorized by non-linearity and brittleness, staking your entire livelihood on one hyper-specialized lane is a massive liability.
It really is.
If that lane gets paved over in 3 years by a generative AI model or a global supply chain collapse, all that accumulated expertise suddenly has zero market value.
Which means the ultimate meta skill for any professional today is the willingness to continually relearn from scratch. You have to be able to look at the expertise you spent 10 years building, recognize that the environment has shifted, and pivot to a new skill set without letting it feel like a personal defeat.
That is so hard to do.
It is an incredibly uncomfortable process. Even Wolfe admits that letting go of hard-won knowledge is painful, but the capacity to pivot rapidly while maintaining your confidence and momentum is the literal definition of personal anti-fragility.
It requires completely detaching your ego from the database of things you currently know and reattaching your ego to the speed at which you can adapt to new information.
Yes, beautifully said. If we synthesize this entire journey through the acronym ARC, the shift in what gets rewarded is stark. SBOD-era leadership rewarded pure execution. The plan was known, you just ran it well. VUCA-era leadership rewarded deep analysis. You gathered mountains of data, shrunk the uncertainty down to a manageable size, and then committed to contingency.
But Bainai and Bedlam entirely removed the luxury of finishing the analysis.
They do. Neither execution nor analysis are bad things, but they are radically insufficient on their own today. Bainai conditions reward your capacity to probe, sense, and respond. You are rewarded for functioning and systematically improving, while the picture remains blurry and the ground actively shifts beneath your feet.
So, to bring this all the way back to our starting point, the next time a coworker sits back in their chair, sighs and pines for the days when you could just lock in a simple, reliable 5-year plan, you can validate them.
You really can.
You can tell them that what they are describing was real. The SBOD era existed, but it is never coming back. And it isn't gone because the world necessarily got worse. It is gone because the world became far too hyper-connected and complex for any single plan to contain. Which leaves you with a very different kind of challenge for the week ahead. If your value in the marketplace is no longer defined by the static expertise you have accumulated, but rather by how fast you are willing to abandon that expertise when the environment changes. Who are you? How do you anchor your sense of identity and self-worth when your professional knowledge is guaranteed to have a shelf life? I mean, what is one area of your life or career that is merely resilient right now, and what would it take to make it truly anti-fragile?
That's the question we all need to be asking.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, embrace the chaos, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you for listening to Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I welcome your feedback, your challenges, and your shares with your connections, colleagues, and clients. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And remember, don't let the shift hit your plan.